Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hollywood Knitter. My name is Allison and I'm your host. I'm recording from my home in Los Angeles, California on Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. Yes, it's 2021 and it has been months since I came to talk to you. For various reasons, COVID, lockdown, work, sickness, life, all of that. Lack of motivation. I'll give more of an update on that later, but I am happy to have wished 2020 a bonjour and a goodbye and a see you later. Hopefully not. And hopefully 2021 is full of better, just better. It has to be better than 2020. That's just really where I'm going with it. But because it has been since early October, since I last talked to you, I have a ton of knitting. So we're going to go and talk about my FOs, my whips. Then I'm going to give a little 2020 look back and talk about my goals in 2020 and give a status on those, as well as my upcoming 2021 goals, knitting goals. And then talk about life and what's been going on and why it's been so long and all that wonderful jazz. So let's get into the knitting. I'm going to start off, excuse me as I pull my notes. I'm going to start off, with pulling up my notes properly. And let's talk about the sweater. The sweater, I'm wearing it. This is the Dripping Honey by Anna Johanna. I knit it from August 12th to November 11th in Bare Naked Wool Jacob's Dream. I ended up using a little less than 3 skeins, and that ended up being 1,280 yards. And this, if you remember, was going to be my Rhinebeck sweater, back when we thought we were going to have Rhinebeck. But I picked this yarn up at Rhinebeck the year before, 2019, with the idea that it was going to be a sweater. And then picked this pattern, which I really liked, Dripping Honey, which is a DK weight pattern, and this is marked as a DK weight wool, but in actuality for me it was a fingering. So I had to make adjustments on the gauge. I had to change the needle size. I had to go up in the US 5. I made some other kind of minor modifications. The big one being I did a size larger to get what I wanted and kind of got to show up close. So the cool thing about this sweater, which is kind of hard to see in this light, is that it has different cables that go to different different cable lengths. And then I'm going to stand up and the cables go all the way down, a little bit of a high-low, very just simple sweater. And I wanted a v-neck because I've realized I don't really like crew necks all that much unless they're wide. I don't like stuff up against my neck. But yeah, a basic sweater. I had to adjust, I know, the sleeves. They're probably a bit tighter. You can see they're really fitted. I haven't worn this yet. This is the first time I'm wearing it. I have blocked it, but maybe a smidge tighter than I would normally like. But the body has the room that I wanted and the fit. So overall, I'm really pleased with it. It is a woolly, toothy wool. So normally I will wear something under it. I actually just threw this on for the podcast. I'm at home and lounging on a Sunday, so I'm not lounging in my beautiful knitwear. I save that for during the week when I'm lounging at home, working from home. But again, this is Dripping Honey, and I really liked it. It was very simple. Obviously, you can see tons of stockinette. Did take me 2 months. Just, fingering weight sweaters take a long time. But overall, I'm happy with it. It was the last sweater I knit in 2020. Socks. I finished 2 pairs of socks since I last talked to you. The Fraser socks, these are for the boyfriend. These are a pattern I made up, and it's kind of hard to see on the sock blocker, so I'll take it off. But I basically did kind of a cable pattern that went up the front and the back of the sock that I sort of made up at the beginning of the project, kind of as I went. It's like a 2x2. Is it 2x2? Yeah. 2x2, did some twists here, straight twists, things like that. The yarn is Forbidden Fibers, Gluttony, Sock, and Clan Fraser. So just another basic pair of socks that he wears. I have to say that his sock drawer, well, his drawer of socks, of which half of them are knit socks, are pretty full. So these will probably actually go into a box. He needs to start wearing through his socks. Though in reality, I think what's happening is he doesn't wear a hole in the socks so much as he just wears them and they get kind of tired. There's a few that the colors haven't held up as well. You know, they start to fade out because I do wash my socks in the washing machine on the hand wash cycle and then I air dry them. But eventually, you know, they fade a little bit and they get a little not as crisp as brand new socks. So he probably has a pair or two that are ready to potentially go to either me or the trash. They're not there yet though. So the other pair of socks I was knitting on, I think I cast on since I last saw you. Let me check when I started these. November 5th through December 25th. And these were going to be a pair of socks for my mom for Christmas. But I didn't finish them in time. So I sent her some other socks for Christmas. But this is just Patton's Crochet. Very simple. I just did a rib pattern all the way up. And then on the heel, this is some Cascade sock I had in black that I did for the heel because I was worried about having enough for the length. In retrospect, I probably would have had just enough to get this. I didn't have that much left over, just a tiny, tiny little ball. Patton's Crochet, I picked it up as Joann's. It's, you know, workhorse yarn, a little thicker than your normal fingering weight, probably more of a sport weight. So they have really cool, you know, patterns. This is a cool stripy colored, you know, pattern. So yeah, these were my purse socks for a while till I committed to finishing everything on my needles for 2020. So I worked at that. Then the last big project that I was working on, again, I finished this one in early December. So this is my Dotted Rays by Stephen West. And I started this in mid-October and I finished it in like December 12th. So like early December. And it's gorgeous, guys. It is so gorgeous. So this is the Dotted Rays. And it is sizable as I did the large wedge. Can't even really see it. But I'm really happy with the yarns, the progression I had and how it really looked. So the yarns I used, I'll start. I gotta keep referring to my notes. This was Miss Crosby train case in Enchanted Garden, and I used about 100 yards of that. It's kind of the start, the white. Then I went into this gray kind of stripe there, and then it was the gray, which was 3 Irish Girls and Adorn Luxe and Bait and Hook, and this was something I actually got at the Zombie Apocalypse as part of the goodie bag. Then the biggest part of this is this kind of green, and this is Blue Moon Fiber Arts and Crackle Crackle Pop. It's the lightweight. Though their lightweight is more like a sport weight, and I was worried when I started knitting with it because it was noticeably thicker, but in the finished garment you can't really tell. So I used all of that, and that was 420 yards. And then the last kind of main color is Olan Sock Yarn, Sock Light and Zenith, and I used almost the whole thing, 400 and something yards of that. And then most of the patterns call for 5 colors, and I had a 5th color, but I didn't want to break into it when I figured I could use almost the last 2 yarns, most of them, but I did want to have I didn't have enough for the border, the I-cord border, so I pulled out that Cascade black that I used in the sock I just had, and I did that for the border, and I really, really like it. It is just so awesome. Now, despite this being so awesome, I think I'm going to set it aside as a gift for my mom for next year, for a Christmas gift. I have never given her like a big shawl like this. I usually give her scarves and things like that. I think that she'll like it, and she does like the blues and the greens, which this is not my normal color palette. That's why it was very interesting that I pulled it together. This was one of my Make 9 projects, which my Make 9, and I'll talk about later, are projects that I pick from my stash. So I pull out stash, or decide at the beginning of the year, and I pick out the 9 projects that I want to knit with stash yarn. And this was picked as a stash buster. So I used, you know, at least 4 skeins of fingering weight yarn that was out. And I pulled colors that all were just in my stash that I didn't have to buy. And they worked really, really well together. I'm just super pleased with the color progression, super pleased with the look of it. And it was simple knitting, semi-mindless knitting. I mean, once you knew the pattern, it was great. And the shape is beautiful. You know, it's a Stephen West pattern. And I know for me, I don't think I truly appreciated Stephen West patterns, because sometimes when he puts out a new pattern, he is definitely all about the color, and he's all about very vibrant and striking project photos that sometimes although I appreciate them and they're beautiful, and he is an amazingly talented man, I don't always picture them myself. And so I actually went, it must have been 3 years ago now, to a Stephen West trunk show that he did nearby with my friend Priscilla, and saw this shawl. And I was like, I would like to do that shawl. And so last year when I was doing my Make 9 and I wanted to kind of use stash, that was one of my goals. I picked the 4 skeins that I had just bought randomly through the years. Like, I picked, gosh, one of them from Rhinebeck, one from Stitches West, one from, as I said, the knitting retreat that I got in the goodie bag. And so to be able to use them all together and just make these beautiful, beautiful projects was awesome. I ended up doing the extra large, which was 16 wedges, but like I said, I kind of adapted it to use the 4 colors I had. I know at least in one of the sections, you really can't tell, I'm not going to point it out, but I didn't have enough the way you're supposed to transition and do the striping rows, and so I just kind of fudged it and looked fine. Can't tell, not going to point it out to you. And so really pleased with this. And this was, I mean, so many yards. I think this was one of my largest yardage projects of the year. And I'll talk about that later. But it did take a while because, you know, it's a lot of fingering. And so when I finished this in mid-December, I decided I didn't want to cast on another big project. I wanted to start the year off with clean needles. So I had approximately 2 weeks, and I decided to dedicate the rest of the month to charity knitting. Now, one of my goals last year was charity knitting, so I decided to work on that. And so the charity knitting that I had committed to doing, or wanted to do as my goals, was Mother Bears. The Mother Bear Project is a project based out of Minnesota that sends crochet and knitted bears to children in Africa and other places. And I've knit a few bears over there. There's some people who do like crazy bear numbers. I think I only do between 3. I think this is 3 and 5. I did 5 this year. I'll point them out. I crochet my bears as opposed to knitting them. I don't know. I just like doing it better. And so yeah. So 2 of these bears I finished before December, and then the other 3 I did in mid-December. So, and these are all just with sock yarn or worsted scraps that I have from various projects, and I just pick colors together and go. So I can't tell you what the yarns are. There's some Karen, there's some Patton's wool, there's some mystery hand spun, it looks like, other kind of stuff, and yeah, and then make a little scarf, do a little thing. So I am going to get these out. I think I have tags, the heart tags that go with these, and then mail them with, I think it's $3. I haven't mailed any since probably last year or the year before. And then I usually make a donation too, because it's a great project. So my goal was 5. I stopped at 5. They're not that fiddly, but they're toys, so they're a little fiddly. So I definitely was ready after doing 3 in a row. And then my crochet skills and etc. But overall, I'm pleased with them. They're cute. They're in a little basket right now. The other thing I wanted to do was charity hats, and I don't have a charity I make these for. I just usually put them in a bag and at various points donate them to charities that come up that need hats. I have finished 6 or 7 hats in the last 2 weeks. I picked up some Lion Brand Woolies Thick and Quick when I went to go get a Christmas present for my boyfriend's mom. She is a crocheter. So this year I decided to get her some yarn and a gift card from Joann's. And while I was there, I picked up, just because I liked it, this skein of Lion Brand Thick and Quick, and I just knitted a simple beanie. I then did another I had a mystery ball of this pink yarn. It's probably acrylic base, I'm not sure. And again, did another beanie. All of these took 2 to 3 days. After the bears, I was sitting there and I didn't want to go downstairs, and I had a crochet hook and I had scraps and I wanted to use some balls up. So I went on Ravelry and I found a crochet. Here, I'm going to take this hat off, which I'll talk about in a minute. A crochet pattern, and I knit these crochet hats, just scraps. You can kind of see it's got just a little bit of all sorts of things, and I tried to kind of color group them. So that one is like pinks and purples and stuff like that, and this one's like blues and greens, and a gray. And yeah, so they're just a little bit slouchy, fit my big noggin, which I don't know what that means, but there's heads of everybody's size. And again, these took a few days. I can't name the yarns. These are just scraps. Once yarn becomes under a certain size, it just goes into kind of a scrap bin, and I promptly forgot what it was. I probably could figure out some of these. I know, like, this is Karen Simply Soft. This is some Barocco I have left for my blanket. Looks like I have some leftover handspun I picked up somewhere. Some various stuff. So that pattern was Unforgettable Hats by Elizabeth Pardue, and it was just like a free crochet pattern. Then at the end of December, I was trying to figure out my next year's goals and figure out projects and what I wanted to do. So I spent a lot of time doing that and wanting to pull some of my older stash and use it. So one of the things I pulled was this beautiful handspun I have from my friend Emily. And I don't know, I've had this in my stash for a while. So this is the anchor hat, just very simple ribbing with a little 1 or 2 rows of stockinette. Makes a beautiful beanie. I did that. And then with the leftovers, I wanted to use it all up. I did the Farmer's Beanie hat. So the Anchor's hat is by Petite Knitter. This is the Farmer's Beanie by Britt, and it just does some ribbing, and then it's goes to a different ribbing and a different color on top. And another just beanie style. One of these I'm going to keep, and one I'm going to charity. I just haven't decided which one is which, and I'll decide later which one will stay. I have so many hats, but I love the colors and I love the handspun. So that was 2 more hats, and again, I finished all of these. So 6 hats in less than 2 weeks. The majority of these are charity. And then I had one more I cast on because I had meant to record this on the 1st, but I wasn't feeling well, so I didn't force myself. And so I had already started another hat, and this is Mad's hat by Jody Brown. And it is held with two fingering held together, and then I held a mohair with it. Except the ribbing. I wasn't sure I was going to have enough of the mohair, so I didn't do it on the ribbing. Plus, I don't know, I just didn't. And then I held it throughout. And then at the very, very top, I ran out of one of the fingerings and the mohair. So I had to switch to a different color mohair. And then I held the yarn I had more of together. But it's just a little tiny thing at the top. I don't think it really grows. And so this is the Mads hat. I did make a modification. Her pattern calls for a slip stitch. There we go. a slip stitch purl right there kind of, and it called for it to be 4 rows high, and I didn't like it. Didn't Then it became a 6-row repeat, and I really liked it at the odd, so I did it's like a knit purl, and then you have the slip stitch for 3 rows, and then you do knit purl again. And so I like that 5-row better than the 6, so I did shorten that a little bit. But that was kind of it, and then I did the length and used all the yarns up. So this is another charity hat. I'm really happy with it. I'm going to keep it on because my hair is all messed up today. So I think that is all of the knitting I've done. So I got a sweater, giant shawl, 2 pairs of socks, charity, charity, charity. So January 1st, I had relatively clean needles. I had cast on for a hat because I couldn't have nothing. And so I was working on the Mads hat. So I cast on for a love note. And everyone's familiar with the love note. It is from Tin Can Knits. It is a more cropped version. A lot of them use mohair. It is 2 yarns held together, and I haven't printed out my pattern yet because I haven't been at work, but I'm using this mystery fingering that I picked up at the Knockers retreat, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And it's like 1,600 yards of it, and it's like a wool camel. I think it's camel, something soft. It's super soft. And then I'm pairing it with this lace weight apple green Knitting Notions yarn that I've had in my stash for a while. I picked it up at SSK back when lace shawls in lace were a big thing, and I just never did one. And then I was going to try to do a lace shawl, and I can't find any that I really like. So I like knitting lace shawls, and I have 1 or 2, but it's just not where I guess I am in my head right now. So I stumbled or thought or had an epiphany of pairing these 2 together and making a love note. So no mohair because I would never be able to wear it with a mohair, honestly. And I have very barely cast on, but you can kind of see how it's looking. And I'm really liking the color. It's kind of like the apple green and then the other kind of leaf green together. Kind of makes this really great color. And I'll have more later. I spent a lot of time figuring my gauge. My gauge, I'm a tight knitter, so I almost always have to go up needle sizes. And then trying to figure out, looking at the ease and figuring out the size and doing a gauge swatch. So I did a gauge swatch and then I pulled it out because that's what I usually do. And then started it. So I'm thankful. I am changing the pattern a little bit. So she calls in the instructions to do a provisional cast on, and then you come back and you knit on the ribbing. I didn't really want to do that. I find that my cast offs aren't as good as my cast ons in terms of stretch. So I decided to do the ribbing cast on. So I had to make some adjustments because I didn't want it to be, like I said, this is a crew neck and I didn't want it to be tight. So I had to do it more than once. I will try to cut that out. So I had to make some adjustments there. So my cast on is a little bigger than what calls for in her end. I'm hoping that means I have enough room in my neck. It's not too tight. We'll see. I'll get a little more down into it before I start the lace and try it on again. But so far I'm pretty pleased with it. And I have it in my beautiful home row fiber bag on owls, which is really pretty. So cast on for January 1st. My goal is to have it finished by end of February, probably. They take about 2 months with mine. I do find that because these are larger needles, and that was one of the things, it calls for like a size 10 needle. And I don't actually have size 10 needles. So my needles is my main needle set is a ChowGoo interchangeable, but my ChowGoos only go up to a size 8. And so I rely upon my older Knit Picks interchangeable set that I've had forever for the larger size needles. So like when I did the thick and quick hat, I think I had to do it on like 13s, which I haven't pulled those out in a while. And I do find that knitting on such large needles hurts my hands. Like I can only do a few rows and then I have to stop. On this, it calls for size 10, and that is the only tips I don't seem to have. And so I'm actually doing them on a 10.5. And I like that fabric, so hopefully we're good. And as I said, I usually have to go up a little bit anyways. The other thing I cast on was kind of a spur of the moment cast on. Wasn't something I'd planned, but I was knitting on the farmer's hat, and this yarn here is Mad Tosh DK, and I think the antique colorway that I had left over from another hat. And my feet were cold, and I really wanted some like thicker socks in my fingering, and it was almost sock washing day, so I didn't have a lot of knit socks to choose from. And I was like, how cool would it be if I had DK weight socks, thinking they would be like the thicker socks I was looking for. So I went into my scraps and pulled out some DK weights. And these are the 3 I'm going to be using. I took the balls I had in each of these and I split them evenly in half because they are all partials. And I probably, because I'm not sure exactly how much yarn DK weight socks take. That way, by splitting them exactly in half, I can make sure, basically knit until I'm out of yarn, and then I end up wherever I end up. I'm hoping to get like short, not shorties, but shorter ankle socks. And I'm using a pattern, it's a free pattern, and it's called Fun Rem Soccer by Ninja Chickens. And it has some cool little color work around the ankle that I'm hoping to be able to do. The main part of my sock is the orange, and this orange is leftovers from a cabled sweater that I did years ago. I picked up the yarn at Rhinebeck, can't remember what it is. This is the Mad Tosh in the antique, and then this is some random tweed that I have that I don't know where I got. So yeah, so I passed these on, and they are kind of, I guess they'll probably be my sock knitting. I'm kind of making it up as I go, as I said. I've gotten the toe, and I did 1 row of kind of the contrasting white, and I'm going to continue onto the foot. I'm doing these on a 3 millimeter, so 2.5, and I'm doing 52 stitches. So we'll see how these go. I'm excited. Well, I like socks anyways, and I like using a scrap, so I'm happy. And it's a little thicker than your normal fingering weight, so hopefully they'll go a little faster. I'm hoping to have these finished by the end of the month. That's my goal. And these will become my purse knitting for when I'm at work and I have knitting time, which on meetings I have to start doing. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of Zoom, no, I'll call them Zoom, but basically online meetings. We use Microsoft Teams. But what I have found myself doing as I've gone back to work as opposed to working from home is that I am doing other things during a meeting, and I sometimes get distracted, or I'm not paying as close attention to the conversation as I should. So I told myself in the new year, when I am on a meeting I need to be paying attention to, I am going to not check my email, not do other things on the side, going to pull out my knitting and use that as the perfect excuse to sit and knit at a meeting and pay attention and do that. So that is my goal there, to try to restrain myself from my my multitasking. I don't know about you. I am a crazy multitasker. I feel like I need to accomplish multiple things, so I'm usually knitting or watching a podcast, or listening to a podcast, half watching a movie and knitting, and playing a game on my tablet all at once. And I get accused of doing too many things by my my boyfriend. And so one of my other kind of unofficial goals this year is to do no more than 2 things at once. No more. So a meeting and knitting would be 2 things, not more than that. Okay, so where does that leave us? That leaves us all caught up on my knitting. Let's talk about what I did, how I did in 2020, what my knitting was in 2020. And I've been tracking my knitting kind of goals and numbers since 2012. Yeah, I think 2012. But I surprisingly did not do as much knitting as I thought last year. Working from home for 5 months, surprisingly didn't get a ton of projects done, but I did get more yardage done. So this was my biggest year in terms of yardage. I have 18,725 yards. Now, a large part of that is my scrappy fingering weight sock blankets, of which I did 22 inches. I'm counting the whole yardage because I didn't count it in previous years and it was finished this year, but in reality, I know that a fair, decent amount of that yardage was in previous years, but I'm counting it to this year. So I finished 34 projects, down from 40 from last year, and as I said, 18,725 yards, which is about 1,000 yards more than last year. Of those, I finished 8 hats, 5 in the last 2 weeks, 5 mother bears, 10 pairs of socks, 2 scarves or cowls, 4 shawls, 1 baby item, 2 sweaters, 1 other, I can't remember what the other was, but there was something else, and then 1 Afghan. Of those 34 projects, 10 were for charity, the hats and the bears. 9 were gifts, 10 were for me, and 5 went into my gift box, meaning I don't know who the recipient is, and they're not for me. So they're into my gift box. Now, my goals last year, I wanted to have a stash that was less than what I started with by 5%. So last year my stash started at 52,800 yards, and I had a goal of reducing that by 5%, which would have been a little over 50,000 yards, and I crushed that. I ended my stash at 43,780 yards. So I used 17%, or decreased it by 17%, which is awesome. Obviously, a large part of that is COVID. I didn't go anywhere. Didn't have the opportunity to really shop that much and to bring a lot into the stash. Now, I did shop a little bit. So I had 2 occasions where I brought yarn in. One was Stitches West, which was the last event before shutdown and everything started. And then I also did a quick trip to Joann's where I that Thick and Quick and 2 other skeins kind of fell into my cart that I will use later. So overall, I brought in 14 skeins for 4,900 yards. So I know that a big part of why I was able to decrease so much is because I wasn't buying, but I'll still take it. I rocked it. Continue charity knitting. I wanted to knit 5 mother bears and 5 hats, and I did that in the end of the year. Squeaked it in, but still a success. I wanted to finish my fingering blanket. I started 2020 having 51 inches done, and it was going to 72 inches, or I ended up with 73 inches. And I completed it in October 2020. And I spent a lot of time on that. That was a lot of knitting hours. And I talked about it then. That was a giant project. Super happy with it. I did find that I tried to pull it out. Well, one, I can't use it right now because my cat's nails are crazy. And I need to go to the vet and get her clipped. And so she snags. Oh, the first time she snagged on that blanket, I was like, oh, heck no. So it is actually put away for now. And the other thing is it's really lightweight, so it's better off as like a summer weight blanket, not really a winter weight blanket. It's very dense, but it's still fingering weight, so not appropriate for winter. Doesn't keep me warm enough. I wanted to knit more gifts for my mom, my sister, and my niece. I'll call that a partial success. I did send knit gifts for my mom and my sister. They both got. My sister got a cowl and a hat, and my mom got a hat and a scarf. So, but again, I knit those, and they weren't necessarily intended for them. I didn't know who the recipients were going to be, and so when I was looking to do some gifts, I kind of went through my gift box, and I found them, and they were appropriate. So, yes and no. And I didn't knit anything for my niece this year for Christmas. I'm a horrible aunt. Well, my youngest niece. I have 2 nieces. One is 10, one is 1. And then I wanted to podcast 20 times in 2020. Fail, fail, fail. I did a total of 7 podcasts. COVID fade. But what I decided is for that, I'm fine with that. I come on and podcast when I want. I don't want this to be pressure, and when I have stuff to share with you. And sometimes that means I'm going to podcast, once a month. Sometimes that might mean 2 months or 3 months go by. Say lovey. So what are my goals for 2021? I want to decrease my stash by another 10%. I'm starting off, as I said, at 43,780 yards or 120 skeins. And I want to have a goal of reducing that to 39,400 yards. And again, I only count full skeins or significant partial skeins once it drops below, as I said, a certain amount, usually 10 or 15% of a skein. Then I call it all used up in my Ravelry stash and I put it in a bin for scraps, just because that's better for my brain. I want to continue some charity knitting. So I want to do 4 mother bears this year, at least 4 hats, and then knitted knockers, which are a knitted prosthetic breast replacement that you can do with cotton. And I picked up some cotton yarn at Stitches West to do that. And this is the charity for the Knockers Retreat, which may or may not be happening, or I wasn't supposed to go if they do. I wasn't supposed to go this past year because I was supposed to be going to Morocco, so I might not be able to. Even if they're having it, they might not have space because I wasn't supposed to go the previous year. So I'm not sure if I'm going, but regardless, I'm going to knit knockers and for the charity. And then I want to do another Make 9. And as I said, my Make 9 is all from Stash. And so I have identified 2 sweaters, the Love Note and the Ashland. And the Ashland was the only one I didn't finish last year. So I finished 8 of my 9 projects that I intended for last year. And the Ashland was the fingering weight yarn that I picked up for Rhinebeck. And I just didn't feel like getting to it. So I'm going to get to it this year. Then I have 2 kind of t-shirt type tops, short sleeve. One is a Shelly summer top and one is the Divining Tee, both from Stash. And then I have kind of 4 shawl / scarves, the Vacillate. I want to do another Brinkless. I have a poncho I've identified and a Molokai, which is another one. And I went looking for a project that matched Stash. And then a pair of socks, the Mosaic Marble socks. And these are going to be for my boyfriend. And these are specifically in yarns I picked up at Stitches West. And it's kind of a cool pattern that looks like marbles, or in this case, they're 4 in the colors of his favorite soccer team. So they'll be soccer balls. So those are my Make 9 for the year. And as I said, I already cast on for the Love Note. Then I decided I have really a lot of fun knitting the hats. They're so fast. They're so easy. They're so gratifying because they go so fast. Like, I think I did so much knitting on big fingering weight projects this year that I felt like I lost my mojo. Like I have to keep going and finish a project. That's just me. But I did notice I didn't pick up my knitting all the time. Now, part of it was what was going on in the world. But then the other part of it is just because I was sick of fingering weight projects. Sick of big projects that took months. So I've decided this is going to be my year of hats. And I'm going to knit a hat for all of my family members for Christmas for next year. And I've identified already 12 hats with Stash yarn. So it's a combo of using my Stash yarn and identifying projects. And then some projects have specific recipients. Some I'm going to just knit a bunch of hats and see who matches. And then once I get to, say, August or September, I'm hoping to have knit most of those hats and then figure out who's left and find a specific hat for them and maybe buy yarn if I need to. That's kind of my plan. So I have 9 family members that I want to make hats for. And then I want to use all the yarn stash I have that's 2015 or older. And this is a goal, and identified, I basically, when I was going through my Ravelry stash, I pulled out things, and that is a lot of what is in my Make 9 and hats I've identified. Or these are all older skeins of yarn that it's time, if you sat my stash that long, it's time to go. So yeah, those are my goals for next year. I'm really excited. And I've already obviously started off with the Mads hat. This is going to be kind of go in the gift box. I was thinking it might actually be something my niece might like, maybe. She's tough. She might be going the goth way. So it might be too light and pinkish for her. I might actually have to do something very dark and black for her, but maybe. Yeah, so this will go in a box and it might go to her family member or it might go for charity. Let me go back to my main notes. It's going to be a bit of a long one, but of course, what would you expect when you haven't seen me in months? Okay, so I think that's all I have to talk about knitting. So if that's all you're here for and you don't want to hear what's been going on in my life and what I've been doing other than that, Happy New Year. I hope life is treating you well, and 2020 brings whatever you need it to bring. And so, yeah. So what has been happening with me? Since I last saw you, I had a birthday. Very donkey. I am 44 now. 44. Didn't really do anything. I have gone back to work. I have a giant project starting. I'm a construction manager for a public agency in Los Angeles. And we just started a I think it's going to end up being about a $400 million construction project that I'm doing on. So that has been taking a lot of my time. It's just started. We broke ground a few weeks, well, November-ish for one of the sites, and then in December for the other site. So that has been taking a lot of time. And then a week before Christmas, I started getting the sniffles at work, and so I took the opportunity. We in Los Angeles are in a terrible state with COVID right now. The numbers have been exponentially increasing since early November, and we have a policy at my workplace, we're a government agency, where any kind of symptoms you shouldn't go to work. And so once I realized I had the sniffles, even though I thought it was just the normal kind of winter cold, once my heat kicks on in the house, I start to get dry and all that kind of stuff. I still took the opportunity to work from home because they had reinstituted telecommute for our group, which they had pulled back and brought most people back into the office at least 2 days a week. Our group, because we're mostly field-based and have separate offices, were actually pulled back to the office full-time, so I was no longer allowed to telecommute. And then they had changed that probably at the beginning of December. And right around Thanksgiving, basically. As the numbers started to creep up in Los Angeles, they went back and started pulling people back out of the office, working from home and things like that. So I took the opportunity to go home. It was like a Wednesday, had some sniffles. And then the next day, I started to feel a little progressively worse. Not horribly, just some congestion and stuff, but I did get a little bit of a fever that night. So when my boyfriend came home, I was like, I have a bit of a fever. Should I go get tested? And he's like, yeah. So I signed up for a test ended up being Friday night at my urgent care through my doctor. Went in again. I didn't even have a fever when I went in there, just some congestion, general fatigue, etc. Got the test that night. I did spike a bit of a fever and had some chills. But then that was it. That was the end of my fever. As you can probably guess where I'm going, Saturday night I got the results and I was positive for COVID. Now, I had been doing social distancing. I had been masking. I don't know where I was exposed. I am very limited. I go to work, I go to the grocery store, and I did go to Joann's. I do have to say that I had fallen off about using hand sanitizer as, when I went to public places and coming out and things like that. So it is possible that I touched something and I touched my face because I am very prone to that. And I just gotten complacent and wasn't, even though I thought, my distancing and my mask and not going anywhere was enough. But in reality, I dropped that very important step where I was washing my hands as diligently and using hand sanitizer and everything like that. And so however I was exposed. And so then I got COVID. Luckily, because I am restricted and I don't go anywhere, I did not, no one in my circle got it, including my boyfriend, who has to this time date tested negative. Of course, as soon as we got it, we're lucky that we have a large enough home that we can distance each other. So I was quarantined to the bedroom and he slept downstairs on the couch. We had used separate bathrooms, and then he took care of me. I had a mild case. I never got a cough. I didn't really have a ton of problems breathing. I did have tightness in chest and I did notice some fatigue and going up and down the stairs. I was a little winded, but I never, had low oxygen levels or anything like that. I was very, very blessed with a mild case of this. And then more blessed because when I was told, when I found out I had it, I just felt bad for anyone I might have exposed. Told work, and we have a very conservative policy. So as soon as you have a positive, you stay out for 2 weeks. Then they do contact tracing for everyone at work. And there was one coworker who was determined to have enough contact because we had a socially distanced lunch days before I started showing symptoms, as was allowed per policy. You know, you can remove your mask to eat, and we did that. You know, we were 8 feet apart in a large conference room, but that was determined to be a risk. Luckily, he tested negative and has not got it. So, knock on wood, that was awesome, because he has an elderly parent, and that was what I was worried about. But yeah, so yeah, I'm a COVID positive. I hopefully will be going back to work this week. It has been over 2 weeks, and I probably took my recovery, as I said, I got a positive on a Friday night, a week before Christmas. So Christmas was, I finally got to like be downstairs on Christmas a little bit so that we could, you know, share open presents and I could watch my family's Christmas. I wasn't feeling that bad, but now I feel like I'm fully recovered. I don't have any more symptoms. And I have a release from my doctor, so hopefully I can go back to work tomorrow. But yeah, I just wanted to put it out there that it is out there. And right now in Los Angeles, it is crazy how the numbers are going up. And as I said, I don't know where I got it or where I was exposed, and I'm just really thankful that I don't think I passed it on to anyone else. So other than that, the holidays were great. Missed my family and they missed me. We didn't do the normal family with his family, which we normally do a big family gathering on midnight. We didn't do any of that. So Christmas was very subdued this year, very sad in a way. We didn't get to see people. We didn't get to hug people. But it's what you need to do. And other than that, I've just been watching like a lot of television, reading a lot of books. And as I said, doing some knitting here and there, spending a lot of time the last week figuring out my knitting for next year. I love planning. I had so much fun taking out yarn and figuring out hours and hours, just digging through Ravelry, trying to match patterns to yarn I had. That's kind of how I've been working. So, other than that, I could talk about what I've been watching and reading. Maybe we'll save that for next time. I'm already getting kind of up there. Yeah. Travel plans. The only travel plans I have right now, you know, knock on wood that it happens, is the knitting Stockinette Zombies knitting retreat in Minnesota in June, which was canceled last year. So that I was supposed to attend. So I'm scheduled to attend this year. I'm hoping by June we will be in a better place to have such events. I'm very much looking forward to getting the vaccine as soon as I can. I'm not sure when that's going to be. I'm very interested to see that I've had it. There's not a lot of data yet on the kind of immunity that will grant me. We'll see. Yeah, it's still just kind of a scary place, and trying to get through it and do my part, you know. I feel at the end of the year is giving blessings. It was a very tough year. Spent a lot of time at home. I've definitely feel the lack of connection. And that's one of my personal kind of goals for 2021, is to kind of reach out there and do some more. There's a ton of Zoom knitting meetings and friends and things like that. And I'm just really bad about doing that. So I'm going to try to make more of an effort to get out there and get on there and talk to friends. And yeah, I've just sort of become a hermit with just work. And yeah, I'm hoping 2021 finds all of you guys better places, better happiness. I hope everyone's family is safe. And if 2020 was a tough year for you, I hope 2021 is going to be better. And if it wasn't, because there's a lot of people who had a lot of wonderful things happen in 2020. And if that was you, awesome. Congratulations. We should all look forward to the positive and the good things that happen and try not to focus so much on the bad, because there's still a lot of awesome things happening, and personally and in life, in the world. You know, it's just sometimes harder to see it in this current pandemic crisis and the politics and everything else that has been going on. But I'm definitely going to try to be more grateful this year, more happy. I mean, I'm alive, and that's a big thing right there. And I have a good job, and I have people who love me and people I love, and ultimately that's the biggest thing. That's what's important in my knitting, and the ability to knit joy and send it out into the world. That's awesome. Anyways, I think I'm going to leave it there. I want to thank everyone for joining me. Thank you so much for still watching. I hopefully will not have quite so long of a break between the next podcast. And if you're looking to find me, I'm Allison1031 on Instagram, though I was a horrible Instagrammer last year. I am going to try to do some more pictures this year. I just felt like I didn't have anything picture worthy, or I don't know. I fell off all the social media wagons. But you can find me as Allison1031 on Instagram or Ravelry. And yeah. So that's a wrap from Hollywood, where fantasy meets fiber and dreams are knit. Happy 2021, everybody.